Welcome
and
to the Self-Service podcast, ladies. It's real.
It's an honour, never a
Thank you
chore.
for joining.
How many intros are we going to do to get it right?
But yeah,
Early
welcome. I feel like people need to know where this podcast actually came from, because Emily, I think this all started when we were in lockdown. You were in Sydney, I was in Brisbane, and we would call each other, I don't know if you remember, every day at the same time. And I think for me, it was like 3 o'clock in Brisbane, and for you, it was like 2 o'clock in Sydney. And we would just talk, and we would like laugh so much, and we thought we were so funny. And we were like, we'd be on the phone for like 2 hours and be like, we should make a podcast. And this was what,
People
like
need to hear it.
3 years ago? And now here we are.
The whole time we thought we were on the similar time zone, and we
Yeah,
weren't.
but we actually weren't.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was lockdown. I remember going for dinner with you, talking about it, being like, I'm going to start this podcast. You just kept saying, watch this space. Here we are.
Here we are.
3 years since then, but better late than never. So yeah, thank you so much, girls, for joining. Might be good to maybe give the listeners a bit of a background into like how we met, who we are, so that they know how we got here, really. But Emily, how did we meet? Because I feel like I forget this, because it wasn't when we were traveling, was it? It was when we were living in Bournemouth.
No, and I've literally been sat here just thinking about it because I knew you were going to ask. And all I can think of is the house in Bournemouth. We would have met through her in the house in Bournemouth on a night out, probably.
Yes. And we all rocked up wearing the same outfit.
Met.
We were all wearing like black leather skirts and like crop tops. Do you remember we all wearing and black boots? We all like had the same outfit on. We looked like a girl band.
Oh, we had a photo shoot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that the first time I met you? I don't remember. But
yeah, so that's where we met. And then you were going traveling like a few months before me and my friends were going traveling, doing like the classic Southeast Asia thing. And then we met along the way, didn't we? And sort of like got to know each other better as friends, probably like Vietnam then.
Yeah, and we had the villa in Bali. Yeah, we were traveling together towards the end. Then did you go home? Did you come straight to Australia?
Then I went straight to Australia, but before you, I went straight to Brisbane. And then that's when I think it was like a couple of weeks later, I got a job and met Jess.
Yes, that's how we met. I think had I been there maybe like 3 months, I think, already. Yeah, and I was still, I think,
had you been there long?
Yeah, I think 2-3 months maybe. Maybe I just started. I don't know, but I was doing quite well in the job anyway. And then I think I was still pretty much trying to find my feet though. And then met you, and then here we are. Not left each other's side.
It's when you were out knocking on doors as a salesman.
Oh God, yeah, it was. We were great though, weren't we? In that
we were
40
really
degree
good,
heat.
actually.
Yeah.
We were top sellers. Yeah, for anyone that's gone to Australia and got themselves in a direct marketing role, we feel you. And maybe that could make a whole other podcast. That'd be quite funny, actually.
That would be a great podcast.
But how good was it for like meeting new people? Like when you move abroad, obviously the hardest thing is like not having friends. You don't know people from, it's kind of difficult to connect at first with Australians. So it was all like a real big office of British people, wasn't it, basically? And so it was also quite fun. And that's how he made friends. And then you came out to Brisbane and stayed with me for a while. And then I introduced you to Jess. And then really weirdly, I think I went back home for Christmas, came back. You guys ended up moving in together without me. And I moved in with someone else. That was an absolute rookie error.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
You went through.
Yeah, that was great though. I actually think I'd met you once, Emily, we went for dinner maybe at that tapas place on Brisbane River. And then I think Alex also was like, oh, you was like, yeah, I'm looking for someone to move in. I was like, well, hello. So it just happened.
Jess is moving.
Fine, I'll move in.
Yeah.
I feel like that was a really good time in our lives though, right? We had this group of 5 of us, didn't we? That was just like the girls group in Brisbane. We did everything together. It worked. We had dinner around each other's house. So like we didn't really feel lonely or anything. That was like I feel like that was I don't know about you, I feel like that was my prime time.
Prime time.
I think we'd like taken a friendship out of how we have it usually at home in the UK, and we just planted it in Australia. So it really didn't feel like any different. It felt really comforting because we all just got on so well. Yeah, it was really nice.
I think
It was a
I
great
definitely
time.
had an idea, sorry, before I moved to Australia, that everyone, like, you meet Aussies, and everyone has this idea that you meet an Aussie man, you have an Australian friends because you work in a job with Australians, and it is just a complete opposite. The only people I know that are Australian are people that are in my office. But anyone outside that, it's English, Irish, Scottish, or like we had when we first got there, like a close-knit friendship group. But even after that, like, you're just drawn to the same nationality as you. Definitely not the idea that they give you before you come out.
No.
Sorry, Graham.
And I think it's just like, I think it comes to connection, like what you need. I feel like it's, even though we're like really similar to Australians, we're also really different in terms of our background, experiences, our banter, what we find funny. And I think just the connections are easier when they're people that are also the same as you, right? And of course there are loads of us in Australia, so it does make that easier. But Ems, obviously you've been out there the longest since then, so you've been out there a while now, and it's a difficult time, right? And even now, would you say that a lot of your friends are sort of still fit into that sort of British category?
They are, like, some of them, a couple of them are citizens here, but even if they are, can literally hear my Aussie accent as I said that, but even if they are, their partners are English or Irish. You definitely fall into that. I can feel like it's what you're comfortable with, and also all those people that you're friends with have the same experience of having to move away from home, being out here with not your family, having to, not that it's a chore, but having to call home, and all of those things that are just part of your day-to-day life living abroad. They're the people that you can share it with, whereas Australians, like, they can be your great friends here, but they don't get that because they're here with their family in their hometown, in a job really close to their house, whereas they're going away on their holidays wherever they can, whereas we're always thinking about the next trip home, and everyone's in that boat of going back to Europe way for their holidays and that kind of thing. But I feel like, how long have I been here now? 5? I always feel like I'm stuck at 3 years, but I think it is 5, coming up to 5.
I think it's 5.
I think it must be, because I was there for just over 3 years, and then I've been back nearly 2 years now, so probably 5 years you've been there. Jess, you were there for a year.
Yeah, and I've been back 5 years.
You've been back 5 years?
6 years.
Oh, no, 4 years. I've been back 4 years. That makes sense. Yeah, so it is 5 years for you. It's 4 years in September for me. That's really scary.
I don't think I'll ever admit that it's been that long.
No.
I feel like you just keep going and go, just another few months, another year, maybe, we'll see. And then I think I'll be a grandma and I'll be going, I've been here however many years. I literally don't think I'll ever accept it.
No.
I think that's why I really want us all to get together, because I think we've all kind of had similar yet different experiences over the past 5 years, but also sort of through our 20s getting towards 30. I mean, I've recently turned 30. You're 30 next year, right? Jess, you've got a few years yet.
Oh, wow.
But it's like, it's really interesting how kind of moving abroad and going through life in this kind of what is a pretty difficult and transformative decade as it is, and how that sort of impacted us all in different ways, and how we feel, I suppose, about where we're at. And I think this is what I really wanted to talk about today, was that feeling of having like all of your shit figured out by the time you're 30, and what pressures we kind of put on ourselves and why, and kind of how that's really like impacted us through getting to this stage, and still, I suppose, being, for some of you guys, obviously being in your 20s. So Jess, do you want to maybe give us a bit of a story about your sort of travels and where you're at now?
Yeah, well, I think I still feel just as lost, to be honest, but I I think since I was kind of at university, I went off and travelled, and then my stint really going through to Australia was like, I'm going to go to Australia, do this one last trip and experience it, because I've always wanted to go there. Then I'm going to come home and get a job and do what everyone else is doing. Like, that was the mindset that I was in. And I was like, I have to just go there for a year and then come home and get a normal job. So I stuck with that. And then towards the end of Australia, I was like, no, I don't really need to be doing that. And I don't want to do that. But just circumstances at the time, left it too late, came home. And yeah, been home 4 years now. And it's been, I don't know, quite a journey. I think it's been quite difficult for me to be like, I should be doing this. But I've always felt like I should be doing this because everyone else around me is just working 9 to 5, not really doing much traveling at home, you know, just living for the weekends, saving up to go on those holidays in the summer, getting a house and things. And that's, I think, always been in the back of my mind. I'm like, I should be doing that. That's why I came home. But as I guess time's kind of gone on, I've been like, I don't need to be doing that. That's not what I want to do. So yeah, I'm like pretty happy where I am at the minute. I was living in Manchester for 3 years, had a really fun time. I made some amazing friends. I was working in a really good job that I really loved. And then again, circumstances in work kind of changed. So now I've come home, which I think has been the most difficult part of this journey, coming back to my parents at 27, feeling like I'm taking a stepping stone back in life, which again, society has made me feel like that I shouldn't be coming back to my parents at this age, when in fact I've come home to save for my next goal, where I want to kind of be, which, you know, again, needs kind of figuring out. So yeah, I think it's been difficult for me to not kind of be in that mindset that I'm doing the wrong thing, and that I'm 27. Oh my God, I need to be saving for a house right now. Why am I not having a baby? But I don't want to be doing those things right now. So I think there's just a difference in what you want to be doing, what you think you should be doing. But it's also really helped me that, you know, you two as well, I've got a, you know, good bunch of friends around me that are very much in the same situation. So other than my friends, I think social media is one thing that's making me feel like I'm in the wrong place. But also just society, that you think you should be doing that. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I'm just trying to take each day as it comes. You know, I'm kind of happy in my job. It's nice being at home, you know, taking the pressure off things. Got a good group of friends around me. I can do what I want in the minute. I've got a bit more freedom. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah, that's kind of, don't know where I'm going next, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I think you're totally right in saying that there's, you know, a lot of pressure from, you know, your friends and family doing things or saying things, but also that societal pressure in social media and like what you should and shouldn't be doing. But I'd love to know a bit more about, like, when you came home, what did that get worse because you were around people? You said you felt the pressure before you left Australia, but what was it like whilst you've actually been back in the UK? And also, how did you maybe change that mindset?
Yeah, when I did first get back, that was probably the biggest struggle, because I didn't want to come back. And I think it was those last 2 months that I was in Oz, and I was like, I don't want to go home now. So then to transition back to that, and because, you know, the past 4 years I'd been working overseas, it was I don't think I prepared myself for the transition of just coming back to UK life. And at the time, like the girl that I moved in with, for example, you know, very much a home bird, had never done any of this. So for me to then move in with her and be like, oh my God, I just want to go back to Australia, or I want to be away, it just wasn't relatable. So I struggled with that. I wasn't around the correct people at the time when I first got back. I was thrown into a job that was just not my cup of tea at all. I just kept very busy with it. And then it came lockdown and COVID. And I think that just heightened the feeling even more, because I was like, I'm trapped now. But also I couldn't do anything about it. So I just got through it, you know, with it being locked down. And then after that, I'd moved in with, you know, a really great girl in Manchester, got some really good friends, and it changed it because I was enjoying life a little bit more. But obviously, as I've spoken to you guys so much, it's always been in the back of my head that, you know, I still want to go back or still want to go away. So I think it's not necessarily that I've switched off the feelings. I've just been dealing with it in a different way. It's not been the easiest thing, and if anyone else has the answer out there of how to deal with it, that would be great. But I think I'm just trying to take each day as it comes and just live, I think, a bit more in the present, because I don't do that very often enough. And
I think we could definitely all do that more, couldn't we? And I don't know if you feel this as well, Emily, but obviously from me and Jess coming back to the UK since living in Oz, I don't know about you, but I feel like the mindset's really different of like the people that you spend time with. I feel like when I was in Australia, a lot of my connections were pretty a bit more carefree. No one really spoke about getting a mortgage. People are thinking about the next adventure. People are out there sort of living for the moment a bit more. And then coming back home into my friendship group, a lot of them have bought their own house. Some of them have started to have children. I feel like the mindset around jobs and career is really important here, which I felt was less important to people that I was sort of hanging around with Australia. So I think that mindset bit is also hard to shift back into when you leave. How have you found that mindset of a difference, Ems, and have you noticed a difference, and how does that impact you living there for so long?
I think I obviously talk to a lot of people from home, so I still get that side of the marriage, the babies, the buying a house is probably the biggest one for me, because that's always something I wanted to do, is to own my own flat. But here, especially in Sydney, it's just not possible. But yeah, you're right. The mindset over here is very much like, when's the next big holiday? Everyone talks about Europe. It's such a big thing. Obviously, one thing because people's families are over there, but also because it's just the Australian way is to go and spend a really long time in Europe and travel the countries. Whereas when you're, I think, over here, I do want to see Australia, but I think people just talk a lot more about those trips to Europe. I think the outdoors lifestyle and everything here is just about like living in the moment and the next sunrise or the next kind of gym or those kind of things. Whereas I feel like at home, and even with jobs, I do think money is a big thing over here, because you can't afford a good lifestyle unless you earn a lot in Sydney. So I think people are still really career driven, but living for the weekends, going out in the week, like weekday nights. I'm not saying like big nights out, but that was one thing I loved at the beginning, not necessarily what I'm doing right now, but people going out on a Tuesday night to the pub or going and doing like activities and stuff in the week. Whereas I never really felt like that at home. I don't know if you guys being back home, that's a thing, is to do a lot in the week, but it definitely is here. Like, yeah, people love it.
I think what I've noticed being back home, because my office at work is in London, but I don't live in London, but I go up to London for work. So what I've noticed from that and my friends that are in London, yes, that's a really normal thing to go in the week. So if you're in the city, but if you're anywhere else outside, it's not, like living not there, it's pretty, calm during the week. You're not really doing much. So I definitely see that difference. How has it made you feel, though, those conversations that you have from people at home when they do talk about what they're doing, what they're getting up to, and as that is different to where you're at coming up to the 30, how has that made you feel, and how has that impacted you?
I think I'm not in the place of wanting to get married right now. So those things I think don't make me feel like, oh, I really want to be doing that. But I think when there's things or goals that you've had in life, like I mentioned before, the owning a flat, that kind of stuff, like it does make you feel like you really want that and you just can't get it. So then you have to find other ways of fulfilling the happiness that you would get from that. And I go, right, okay, I don't have to worry about sorting out house bills and things like that. And, if something breaks, it's not my problem, it's the building's problem. Like I have to try and see the positives of actually me just deciding that renting is the only thing that we can do here. So that's what I need to do. And then the goal is like your visa. Not everyone else at home will be able to get permanent residency. So that's my goal. So I think it's just separating like and I think I definitely have this mindset of I have to do all these things before I'm 30. I'm trying to squeeze it in this last year. I think as soon as I turned 29, I was like, oh my God, I need to run a marathon. I need to do a triathlon. I need to buy a flat. Like, I had this just couple of weeks of thinking like, I felt like I was turning 30 when I turned 29, because I just had this realization. It was like, I've got a year left. But I don't know why I feel like, and everyone kind of feels like you're running out of time. Like it all has to be ticked off. It's just, yeah, I think it's just the turning 30 thing. You probably felt it, Alex. I don't know. Did you feel like that?
Yes, and I can say for sure that life doesn't stop at 30. You know,
No.
when you wake up the next day, things carry on and life carries on, and nothing, you know, transformative just changes. You know, it's just another day. And I don't know why we separate this sort of age and make it this big thing, but I felt that hugely, particularly when I was still living in Australia. And let's not forget to mention what Jess said earlier about COVID, and we've had the whole pandemic through these last few years, which has made that really hard too. But I remember when I was in a really bad place, and trying to decide whether to leave or stay, one of the big things was I did a timeline from my age at the time, I was 28 to 30, and looked at the things I wanted to do in that time. And that contributed to my decision to leave, because I felt like I had to go home, get my shit together, get some savings, and, you know, get a deposit on a house. Whereas I'll tell you now, I haven't done that. Yeah, I haven't got a deposit. I haven't got my own house yet. Yes, I've saved some money, but I haven't bought a house, and I'm, you know, over the age of 30 now. And I think whilst we're on this topic, I think this is a really good thing to talk about, because I feel like there's so much pressure on the buying house thing. And I feel like it's what everyone thinks is that end goal. And I love what you said, Ems, about changing your goals, because I feel like in life things do change, right? And with that means we do have to adjust our goal or our route towards that. But I feel like there's way too much pressure on that getting a house is the best financial step for us all. And I think that people often throw around the term, you know, you're throwing money away if you're renting, but there are benefits to that, aren't there?
Mm-hmm.
Jess, do you want to talk about maybe how you feel about that, buying a house, and what's your opinion on this whole thing?
I think, to be honest, that's never been like quite an early goal for me, but I think that comes with the mindset and who you're being around. So everyone kind of like that I know here has got their own house, and, you know, friends that I made in work in Manchester are now getting their own house. So that naturally made me think, oh my God, should I be doing that? But I actually spoke to a friend a few weeks ago who's just a little bit younger than me, and she's bought a house, and she's so honest. And she was like, don't actually feel like you need to be doing this anytime soon, because she said, I've got a house now, great. I've got 4 walls around me. But she was like, I cannot do anything else now, because I've got things that are breaking. I still need to do things to the house. You know, I need to do the garden. And she was like, I hate to use a word, but she was like, I do feel trapped now. But I think that she very much fell into that because all of her friends around her have got a house. So it was the next thing to do. When you're in that bubble, it's almost like, well, if everyone else is doing it, I should do it. But it's just not something that I know would make me happy right now. So it's not something that I'm obviously saving, but I'm not saving for a house. So I'm quite content with that. It's something that I would want probably in like 5 years or so, but just not right now, because I know deep down that once I've got a house, that's absolutely not what I would be happy in. And I think it takes away your freedom a little bit to, like, maybe I'm going to go do this instead, or I'll do that. So yeah, that's just one thing that doesn't affect me, I think, as much people around me doing that. Yeah, I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I think that's really good to also recognize that maybe one of your values is actually freedom. And I think it's maybe understanding yourself and what you need a bit more. And I'm not saying that buying a house is a bad decision or a not sensible decision, because it obviously is a good decision. That's why so many people do it. But I think it also depends on your values, right? Is stability and security one of my top values? Perhaps I may be more inclined to buy a house, and perhaps from what you've said, perhaps freedom is one of yours. And I've certainly felt like this journey over the last couple of years has taught me that I kind of tell myself I want stability and real like security, but actually I do like the security of change and making decisions and traveling and things like that. So I think that's quite an important reflection. I think that's where I've thought, actually, would it not be better off for us to make sure that we're in a really good financial position before we commit ourselves to a 35-year mortgage? You know, would it actually benefit me to spend the next 5 years saving for a bigger deposit, so then I have a smaller mortgage? What do you think about that, Ems?
I think a lot of people have said that around me, like people at work, you know, Aussies that live here that have bought houses even years ago, and they said that they now can't afford things because of the interest rates. Like, I am fully for not buying a house right now, because I think the decision is taken away from me here. It's not even, I wouldn't even sit down and do the math, because I know that it's not possible to live where I want to live. And, you know, in the location for me is probably the most important thing. Like, I don't want to move away from the beach or the part of Sydney that makes me happy, or where my friends are, where my job is. Like, you know, it sounds silly to think about the gym, but that's something that makes me happy. So I wouldn't want to give that up. But yeah, like you said, everyone says the same thing here, that actually you think it is the best thing ever, but there are so many things that come along with it, having to fix things when they're broken, we've already mentioned, the interest rates. So I just don't even think of it as like an option for me. Like, I think our next goal is to have a bigger apartment, but still rent. So that's just like the next goal for us, is not buying, it's having the money to get a bigger place that has a garden, because we want a dog. But I tell you what, to your question earlier, the dog is a huge thing here. I don't know, in the UK, I know it's very similar, that in Sydney, 95% of people have a dog. And it makes you really, really want a dog. Everyone's on mad pause if you don't have a dog. You have a dog sitting for at least like every other weekend. Like, I feel like that's a massive thing, and we really, really want a dog. But we're traveling too much. Like, we want to go on holiday, we want to go home. So it's just not like the right thing for us. But it feels like such a structured life. Buy a house, get a dog because you've now got a garden, then get married, then have kids, and then buying the house feels like the first piece of this like life that I'm not currently living, because I'm living abroad. So I'm glad that first step is like further and further away for me, because it makes all the other steps even further away, because I'm not, you know, just no one around here is like having babies, things like that in my friendship group. So I guess it's good for me in that sense. But I do obviously see both sides, because I've got everyone on social media from the UK and everyone from Australia. So you have both. But yeah, I'm not ready to do that house buying yet.
Yeah, and I know when I was in Australia, I felt like I found it quite hard to throw my all into something, because in terms of like commitments around things as well, because I thought that, well, Australia isn't somewhere I want to live forever. So I felt like that really sort of affected my decision making. How does that affect you, Ems, in terms of thinking about the future, whether you want to be there long term or not? I know it's a classic question that people ask you, but how does that affect you, if it does?
I feel like I can never say the words, I want to be here forever. And there are people around me that do say that, but I just can't seem to get to the point where I commit 100%. And I think it's just a protection thing. Like, if something happened to family, friends in the UK, I want to be able to go back and not feel disappointed in myself that I made the commitment that this was going to be forever. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever admit it. I might be here for another 20 years and I'll still be saying it's not forever. But yeah, it does impact you. I think it makes you feel like I feel like there's like an end date, like it has to end at some point. Like I keep thinking, oh, why don't I just stop it now? Because like, what am I doing? Like you have that question, I think, do I get another job? Like, do I want to progress my career, or am I thinking, oh, I'll just go home? Like, you're just never really sure, but you just keep like, all I say whenever someone asks me like, how are you getting on? And I was just plodding along, literally just taking each day as it comes and taking tiny goals. And we've just had like the great news that we can actually get PR a lot earlier than we thought, because it was very out of reach for me. It felt like it was too far away. That actually we'll be able to apply like this time next year, which is a lot sooner than we thought. And that is a smaller goal for me. And I feel like we've put so much like time and effort and jobs and farm work and everything into Australia life to not come out with my PR or our PR would just be, it would just be silly really. So I might as well get it. And then I'm just taking that as like the next step. And then not thinking about the fact that you have to keep the PR, you have to be in the country a certain amount of time to even
think
keep
about
it.
that
Like,
yet.
to me, I was talking to Mum about this the other day, and I was like, I said, oh, but I won't be able to keep it. And she's like, just one goal at a time. And then that's how eventually, you know, you get to a decision of whether it's engagement, marriage, kids. And then that's when you start deciding whether you want to do that here or not. But at the moment, I don't have the money to buy in the UK or here. So, and I love my job here. So that's one thing. And, you know, it's just that decision of why would I go home right now? The main thing would be friends and family. But every single person that is at home supports me being here and is not making me feel guilty. I think if I had that, life out here would be so much harder, the guilt.
Yeah, guilt's definitely a big one. I think we'll do another episode purely about the ups and downs living in Australia. I think that makes its own episode completely. But I really resonated with what you just said there about about taking goals one step at a time and trying not to think about the next thing. Because like for me, I did get permanent residency before I left, but at the time when I left, you know, I needed to go home. And that was the right decision for me. And you can always think too far ahead and put decisions off because you think, oh, but what if I need to do that and need to do that? And what if I need to come back? But I think it's important to try and take those things in steps. And even coming back to the UK, I think something that we all have in common, even though the three of us have had different experiences, the common theme I'm hearing is that we still aren't really sure where we're going. You know, you can make decisions and move location, but that doesn't necessarily know you've got it all figured out. And I certainly don't. You know, there's definitely been things that, you know, that have really helped me being back in the UK and things that I really needed over the past nearly 2 years. But I'm still in a position where I don't want to say I'm never going back to Australia or I'm never leaving the UK. I don't feel comfortable that I feel like that. I still don't really know. And I think it's trying not to take on also like the projected values of others, where, you know, some people might even give a throwaway comment and say, oh, like, well, you came back from Australia, so why would you go back? Or little comments, you know, that are maybe about, oh, we should be really thinking about settling down now and getting a house and kids. Isn't that what you want to be thinking about? And that's their values, not ours. But I find it personally quite difficult to not take on those values and overthink where I'm going. So yeah, I think that's something that's interesting, that we probably all share that feeling of like, right now, none of us really have a 5-year plan and know exactly where we want to be and what we want to do. But when things start to feel like you want to take that next steps, perhaps that helps those decisions when you actually feel like you want to get engaged and have, you know, kids. Because I don't think any of us here are in that position. We don't want that right now. We don't want to have a house. So why are we putting the pressure on ourselves that we have to work towards that? We're not there yet. And I think it's accepting that we're not there, which
it always makes it worse
helps.
When someone asks you, isn't it? When they're like, so what are you doing? Someone asked me the other day, and it was just on the phone. So what's the plan? What are you doing?
No plan.
There's no
I don't
plan.
know.
We're living in the moment.
No, I also think that
And
with a, sorry to put in, Alex, a generation thing maybe. When I spoke to like family friends,
Yeah.
so are you staying here now then? Is it, or you're not going back anywhere now, are you? Well, I'm not too sure yet. And it's like really different to them because I think, they've always had their life planned out. It's very much been like rigid, house, kids, marriage. Whereas for us, it's changed a little bit, I think, in this generation. So when you're then around them, it's like, oh, well, should I not be doing that? But again, like you said, that's their values. This is ours. And I think that's just evolved over time. So yeah, that is hard though. But you've just got to remember what you want to do. And I think what makes you happy.
yeah,
I think everything happens a lot later now as well, isn't it? Like,
oh God, yeah.
you don't have to. I think our parents' generation, I know my mum had me when she was 28. So, and I'm 29 and I can't even picture that part of my life at all. And that's one thing that gives me, I guess, like, makes me feel better living over here, is that everyone is in the same boat and that things are a bit later. So I don't feel like everyone around me is doing that thing. But yeah, when you do see it on social media or something, it just makes you go, oh, should I be doing that? And you have to do that whole process of getting yourself back to, no, this is how I'm doing it. You block social media for a few days, and I feel like it can just take one tiny thing, one person, one tiny thing that you see, that you then start doubting everything that you've just spent months making yourself feel better about. And then you have to go through that process again, go back to the gym, make yourself feel good, turn off socials. Like, it just feels like a cycle that seems to just get triggered somehow by someone or social media.
Absolutely. And this kind of segues quite nicely. And the question I want to ask you both is, what would be, your top 3 tips to help, other people in their 20s like us, perhaps approaching 30, or people who have just turned 30, on feeling or not feeling like they have to have all their shit figured out? Jess, do you want to start with your 3?
Yeah. I think I think I would love to also hear everyone else's tips, but I think how I deal with it currently is I think socials is such a big one. I get quite easily consumed by that just because a lot of my job's based on that. But yeah, not being super consumed by what everyone else is doing. And I think also as well, everyone putting that on socials, from our perspective, it looks as if they've got this amazing happy life. It's all set up because they've got a house, they've just got engaged, but is it? So yeah, I think taking a step back from that, I think surrounding yourself with like-minded people, utilizing your friends, and communicating as well, like how you're feeling. I know we speak about it a lot, which I think really helps me, and also living in the present, just taking each day as it comes, which I, oh my God, need to do so much more. But living in the present and stop worrying about what I'm going to be doing 6 months down the line, because that might affect this decision right now. I think those 3 absolutely, can really help, definitely.
Awesome. Ems?
I feel like it must have been my mum that said this, but something that's always stuck with me is that, like, nothing that you do is reverse. Nothing that I can never get this right. I get it the wrong way around. Pardon? Did you say?
Nothing that you do is forever or permanent.
Yeah, everything can be reversed is pretty much what I'm trying to say. Like, you can go into a job, if you don't like it, you can leave and change it. If you move to Australia and you don't like it, home is always there. If I want to choose to go home and I don't like it and it's not for me, I can come back. Like, it's just that mindset of, like, you can change it. Like, just go into something, you don't have to think this is going to be like what you just said, Jess, it's not forever. It can just be for a short period of time to see if you like it. That would be my number 1 thing that I need to definitely take on board myself. And the second one would probably be, I think you said, touch on a similar thing, but just surrounding yourself with people that make you feel good, and don't waste your time on people that don't, because it's just not worth it. Like, being surrounded by people that build you up, make you feel good, ask questions about you, and I guess just take an interest in your life and make you feel good, because you need that. Like, and I definitely get that a lot from people here and at home, and I'm very lucky that I have the best of both. But I know it can be hard sometimes when people are going into friendship groups that you just don't feel yourself in, and you might give 100%, but not everyone is your person. It doesn't make them a bad person. It's just not, you can't be friends with everyone. Everyone's personalities don't match. So I think just not putting the pressure on to find your people, but also knowing that it's okay if they're not like your best friends, that kind of thing. And I don't have a third one because I haven't even thought about it.
I have a third one.
Yeah, what about you, Alex?
I have a third one to add, which actually, Ems, I think comes from your mum. And I think it's about what your mum said about having goals that, goals, but also reflecting on what you've achieved as a person. You know, rather like you said earlier, yes, people have goals to run a marathon, to buy a house, but maybe taking a step back and what you've achieved in how you are as a human being, you know, actually what's something to be really proud of. Well, you know, I know I can say that about both of you, that you're authentic, good, kind people, and you know, you can't say that for everyone, so that's something to be really proud of. And if you can get to 30 and feel like, yeah, do you know what, I'm a pretty good human being, I think that's a massive thing in itself. So thank you so much for your tips. I hope they help you guys, because yeah, we know how it feels. And thanks for taking the time, Ems and Jess, to join me. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Please make sure you like, download and share this episode, and make sure you tune in for the next one and feel the power of self-service.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.